The telegraph woman was blamed in a snowstorm until the lonely rancher heard her wire. Frost Pass blamed Viola Reed for the storm order that nearly stopped an ore train. But the truth was worse. A school wagon was trapped below the trestle, the northbound was coming blind through snow, and Viola was the only operator who sent the warning in time. Mason Cray heard the same warning. Then he folded her yellow stop order into his coat because ore paid by the ton and children did not. By morning the wagon was safe, the train was stopped, and Viola's name was ruined. Only one lonely rancher had heard her wire clearly enough to know she was telling the truth. Viola Reed had been in town only 12 days when the snow came hard enough to erase the grade, the road, and every fence post between the depot and the lower ranches. She sat in the little telegraph room with a shawl around her shoulders and both hands on the brass key, listening to the wire click through the storm. The message came broken from Medicine Bow. Northbound late, or extra holding priority. School wagon reported below trestle. Stop all movement at Frost Pass. Somewhere below the trestle, children were waiting in a wagon the snow could bury before daylight. Viola wrote it once in the line book, copied it on the yellow train order sheet, and sent it back with the steady hand that had kept 3 rail towns alive through worse weather than this. Hold northbound at Frost Pass, wagon on grade, repeat and confirm. The wire answered, faint but there. Confirmed. Then Mason Cray stepped into the room, smelling of cigar smoke and cold wool. He was the chief dispatcher for the pass, a square man with a trimmed gray beard and a silver watch chain that crossed his vest like a badge. The ore extra has priority, he said. Ore paid by the ton, children did not. A wagon is below the trestle. A woman hears ghosts when the wind gets in the line. Viola kept tapping. I heard Medicine Bow, I have confirmation. Cray shut the inner door with his boot. Outside, Station Agent Knoll was arguing with 3 passengers about blankets. No one saw Cray lift the yellow copy from beside Viola's elbow and fold it into his coat. The order was not lost. It was in his coat, warm against his heart, while the train whistle screamed outside. You will not hold a paying or train on a frightened guess. Viola stood so fast her chair struck the wall. If you move that train, you may put it through children. Cray's face hardened. If you shame this station, Miss Reed, you will never touch another railroad key. The northbound whistle screamed beyond the snow. Viola turned back to the brass key and sent the order again, harder now, each click sharp as a nail. Stop northbound, wagon on grade, stop northbound. But the line ahead went dead. By midnight, the train had stopped half a mile short of the trestle because a ranch team blocked the rail with lanterns. The school wagon was dragged clear. No one died. By morning, Mason Cray told Frost Pass that Viola Reed had panicked, crossed orders, and nearly stranded the ore extra in a killing storm. The town believed him because his name was painted on the dispatch door, and hers was written in pencil in the wage book. Mothers who should have thanked her crossed the street. Men who could not read a wire spoke as if they had judged one. The only man who did not believe him lived 7 miles up the White Ridge. Ethan Vale had a relay desk in his ranch office because the rail line crossed his winter pasture before climbing the pass. Years ago, his younger brother had died in a washout after 3 men laughed at a late wire. Since then, Ethan trusted the sound of a key more than the sound of a crowd. That night, while the wind shook his shutters, he heard Viola's order through the relay. Broken, repeated, stubborn. Stop northbound, wagon on grade. Then he heard another sound beneath it, a thin, uneven click like someone trying to speak through a hand over her mouth. Ethan was already reaching for his coat when his Aunt June came from the kitchen with a lamp. You cannot ride that grade in the snow. Someone on that wire is being smothered. A railroad someone. A woman at the Frost Pass key. Aunt June looked at the black window. Then at the old scar on Ethan's knuckles from the night he had dug his brother out of frozen mud. Then take the roan, he sees better than you do. Ethan rode with 2 lanterns tied low to the saddle and a coil of rope across his chest. He found the school wagon first, half buried beside the grade, with the driver shaking and the children wrapped in feed sacks. He and 3 ranch hands got them to the section shed. Then he went to the depot. Viola was still in the telegraph room. Cray had locked the battery chest. The stove had burned low. A smear of frost silvered the inside of the window. Viola sat with one hand wrapped in a handkerchief and the other still resting near the key, as if she meant to send with her bones if her fingers failed. Station Agent Knoll would not meet her eyes. "Miss Reed is relieved," Cray said. "Her nerves are not suited to mountain service." Ethan stepped past him. "I heard her order." The room went quiet except for the wire. Viola looked up. She had gray eyes, dark lashes rimmed with frost, and brown hair pinned so tightly that not even the storm had pulled it loose. Her dress was plain black wool, shiny at the cuffs from work. Nothing about her asked pity. "You have a relay desk?" she asked. "At the ranch." "Did it take the repeat?" "Twice." Cray gave a short laugh. "Mr. Vale hears what he wants. He has hated this office since his brother's accident." Ethan did not look away from Viola. "Can you ride?" "I can work." "That was not my question." Her mouth trembled once, not with weakness, but with anger held too long. "If I leave, he will say I ran." Ethan turned to Knoll. "Is there a public line shack between here and my ranch?" Knoll nodded. "Old relay cabin, half a mile up." "Good, Miss Reed will be there, paid by me to watch my ranch relay until the pass opens. My aunt will sit with her. Door stays unbarred unless she bars it. Cray can send his complaint to Cheyenne, and I will send mine right behind it." Cray's watch chain flashed as he moved. "You cannot hire a suspended operator." Viola stood and took her coat from the peg. "He can hire a woman who knows how to listen." Ethan's eyes changed then, not soft exactly, more like a shutter opening in a dark room. Outside, the wind drove snow across the platform in hard white sheets. Ethan gave Viola his arm only after she nodded. His hand was steady beneath her gloved fingers. He did not pull her close, did not cover her with his coat as if she had no say in her own warmth. He walked at her pace and put himself between her and the wind. He helped like a man who knew help could become another cage if offered wrong. The relay shack smelled of pine boards, lamp oil, and cold iron. Aunt June arrived 20 minutes later in a sleigh with blankets, coffee, and a look that could make a banker confess. "You are Viola Reed," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Ethan said you saved the school wagon." Viola looked down at her injured hand. "I sent an order, he saved it." "Then both things can be true." Ethan set coins on the table. $2 a day for relay watch. Same as I paid old Harper. If the pass opens and you want the morning train, I will see your trunk gets on it. If you want to stay until Cheyenne answers, the post is yours until they drag me off my own land. Aunt June snorted. "They tried once, the mud gave up first." Viola almost smiled. Ethan saw it and looked away, as if he had been given something private by mistake. For 2 days, the storm pinned Frost Pass under a white lid. Down in town, Cray's story traveled faster than any train. The new woman had panicked, the ore line had suffered, and Frost Pass had been spared only by men cleaning up her mistake. Viola worked the ranch relay by lamplight. Ethan brought reports from the lower grade and took her messages to stranded families. Aunt June slept in the next room with a skillet near her cot and no patience for gossip. On the 3rd afternoon, Viola asked Ethan for a file. "For the key." "Your relay arm is dragging. It repeats late on the return stroke." "I thought the line was weak." "The line is weak. Your key is also proud." He fetched the file. She bent over the desk, loosening the tiny screw with careful fingers. Ethan watched her repair the brass key the way some men watched a prayer, not because she was delicate, because she was exact. "Who taught you?" he asked. "My father ran a depot in Kansas. He taught my brothers first. They learned enough to leave. I stayed and learned the rest." "Why Frost Pass?" "Because the advertisement said winter operator needed. Good wage, room at station, permanent if proven." "Cray placed that advertisement." "Noel signed it, Cray approved it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And then Cray saw I was not a boy he could scare, or a niece he could flatter." The key clicked clean under her hand, a crisp, bright sound. Ethan leaned closer despite himself. That is how it sounded in my office. If he had heard her rhythm, then the lie had a crack. If they could make the wire repeated in public, Cray's book would not be enough. Viola's hand stilled. "My orders?" "Yes." "Would you swear to it?" "I already did in my head." She looked at him then, really looked. Wind-browned face, dark beard, eyes tired from years of listening for danger before anyone else heard it. He was not handsome in the easy way of men who expected doors to open. He looked like a man who had held doors shut against storms and paid for every hinge. "Swearing in your head will not clear me." "Then we will find what will." The word we sat between them, with more warmth than the stove. The next morning, Frost Pass sent its gossip up the ridge before it sent bread. A boy from the depot store brought a flour sack to Aunt June and pretended not to stare at Viola. Behind him, two women in dark bonnets waited by the sleigh track, whispering over the crate of lamp chimneys they had no reason to deliver. One of them had a son in the school wagon. The other had a husband who worked crays or siding. Viola stepped onto the shack porch with her coat buttoned to her throat. "If you have questions," she said, "ask them while I can answer." The women went still. The one with the schoolboy looked at the snow, then at Viola's bandaged hand. "My Ben said the train stopped because Mr. Vale's men blocked it." "They did." "Did your wire tell them to?" "My wire told the station to stop the train. Mr. Vale heard it from his ranch relay when the depot line went wrong." The woman swallowed. Gratitude fought with fear on her face, and fear won because Cray owned the official story. "Mr. Cray says you crossed the order." Viola nodded once. "Then Mr. Cray should open his book." The second woman pulled her shawl tighter. A woman alone should not speak so hard to railroad men. Ethan had come out behind Viola with an armload of split pine. He stopped at the edge of the porch, close enough to stand with her, not close enough to answer for her. Viola felt that choice like a hand at her back. "A woman alone should not have to," Viola said, "but I was alone in that room when he took the copy." The schoolboy's mother looked toward Ethan. "You truly heard her." The woman's eyes dropped to Viola's bandaged hand, and shame crossed her face before fear covered it again. Ethan set the pine down. "Every word that mattered." The boy, still holding Aunt June's empty flour sack, blurted, "Can she make the wire talk now?" Viola almost laughed from the ache of wanting one person to ask without suspicion. "If the line lets me." She took him inside and let him stand beside the desk while she tapped a greeting to the section shed. The answer came back faint but cheerful. The boy's eyes widened as if the brass key had opened a door in the weather. "That is not magic," Viola told him. "It is listening carefully enough that distance gives up." Ethan stood in the doorway. For a moment the shack was only lamplight, pine smoke, a boy's wonder, and the clean fall of her fingers on brass. He had spent years thinking the wire was a grave marker for what he lost. Watching Viola work it, he understood it could also be a hand held across miles. The women left with less certainty than they brought. That was not victory. But it was the first crack in Cray's wall. That evening Mason Cray came to the shack with 2 rail guards and a paper stamped in blue ink. "Suspension order," he said. Miss Reed is forbidden use of railroad instruments pending review. Ethan took the paper, read it, and handed it to Viola. She read every line without blinking. You walked through a blizzard to give me this. I came to retrieve railroad property. Cray reached for the brass key. Ethan's hand closed over his wrist. That key belongs to my ranch. The wire does not. The wire crosses my land by lease. Cray smiled. A lease that renews next month. Or traffic brings more to this pass than cattle. Defend her, and your winter crossing may become inconvenient. A bad winter crossing can ruin a cattle man, Cray said, and a quiet railroad office can make sure no one knows why. There it was, the thing behind his clean cuffs. Not truth, priority. Viola folded the suspension paper. You hid my duplicate order. Cray's smile did not move. A dangerous accusation from a woman already under review. Then open the dispatch book. Cheyenne will inspect the book. Cheyenne will inspect what you leave in it. For the first time, Ethan heard fear under Cray's voice. It was small, but it was there. After Cray left, Viola went to the relay desk and opened the scrap pad under the sounder. Ethan had used it to mark broken repeats during storms, little dots and dashes scratched in pencil when the wire ran too faint to trust memory. She held the pad under the lamp. This is my order. Ethan bent beside her. Those marks. Your hand, not mine. You wrote the rhythm you heard. Stop northbound. Wagon on grade. See the double break after stop. I use it when danger is immediate. Will it stand? Not alone. Her shoulders lowered, but only for a breath. Cray took the yellow copy. He may rewrite the book. Noel is afraid. Medicine Bow's confirmation may be buried under ore traffic. We need the wire itself to answer. How? Battery power, dry cells, enough to push through the ice load at night when the ore line quiets. Ethan reached for his coat. I will buy them. No. He stopped. Viola touched the little purse at her waist. If I am cleared because you bought the proof, Cray will call it rancher charity. I have fare for Denver. I can spend it on cells. That is your way out. It is also my choice. He hated it, she saw that he hated it, but he nodded. That was the second thing that frightened her. He could want to stop her and still let her stand. They rode to the depot store at dusk with Aunt June behind them in the sleigh. Noel sold Viola 6 dry cells without meeting her eyes. Cray watched from the dispatch door, his silver chain bright as ice. Denver is warmer, he said. Viola lifted the battery crate. So is the truth when it starts burning. On the ride back, the sleigh runner caught a buried stone and lurched sideways. The battery crate slid toward the snow. Viola grabbed it with both arms, and pain flashed white through her wrapped hand. Ethan caught the crate before it fell. Your hand. The cells matter more. Not to me. The words came out rougher than he intended. Viola looked at him over the crate, snow gathering on the brim of his hat and melting in his beard. She had been defended before by men who liked the shape of rescue. Ethan looked as if rescue cost him something because he knew she might still leave. You barely know me, she said. I know how you sound when fear is in the room. How is that? Steady. The roan stamped. Aunt June made a small, deliberate cough from the sleigh seat, though her eyes were smiling. Viola looked down first. The wind was bitter. Her hand throbbed. Denver was farther away than it had been that morning, and not only because her fare sat in a crate of batteries. Steady people can still be tired, she said. Ethan's voice gentled. Then be tired where someone will keep the lamp filled. He did not ask for thanks. He did not ask for trust. He lifted the crate, waited for her nod, and tied it down himself. By midnight the storm worsened. The line sagged under ice. Ethan went out twice to knock snow from the wire poles near the shack. Viola stayed at the desk, sending test pulses into the dark. At 1 in the morning, the sounder answered from Medicine Bow. Weaker. Then clearer. Who calls Frost relay? Viola's breath caught. Reed at Vale relay. Need confirm order sent Storm night. Stop northbound wagon on grade. The line hissed. Ethan stood behind her, close enough that she felt the cold coming off his coat, far enough that she did not feel trapped. Medicine Bow answered. Order confirmed our book. Duplicate missing Frost dispatch. Inspector on South train. Aunt June stopped breathing through the whole message. When the last word clicked through, she signed her name so hard the pencil point broke. Viola closed her eyes. Ethan's voice was low. Again. Again. She sent the request 3 times. Medicine Bow repeated 3 times. Ethan wrote every word. Aunt June signed as witness. Then Viola added the rhythm Ethan had scratched on his pad and asked Medicine Bow to hold the line open until dawn. At dawn, Cray made his countermove. The ore extra whistled from the west siding, though the school road was still being cleared. Cray had ordered it forward before the inspector's train arrived. Viola heard the signal from the shack and turned white with rage. He is moving it before the proof reaches town. Ethan was already saddling. No, Viola said, take me to the depot. The wind is cutting hard. Then we cut back. Aunt June wrapped Viola's hand in fresh cloth and tied it tight. Make them listen, girl. The ride down was a blur of snow, iron sky, and Ethan's arm braced behind Viola in the saddle when the drifts lurched under the horse. At the depot, passengers crowded the platform. Ranchers from the lower road stood with lanterns. Noel hovered near the dispatch room, pale as flour. Cray came out holding the train staff. Miss Reed is suspended. Remove her. One guard stepped forward. Then a rancher named Pike lifted his lantern from the platform edge, and the guard stopped. For the first time, Cray's order reached the room and came back empty. That old habit of obeying a painted door still had its hand on the room. Then Ethan stepped beside Viola. I heard her wire. Pike held his lantern higher. My boys were in that wagon. I will hear it too. Aunt June pushed through the crowd with the signed relay sheet. So will I, and I brought spectacles sharp enough to cut a lie. The South train crawled in an hour late, carrying a rail inspector with snow on his mustache and no humor in his face. His name was Mr. Harlan. He asked for the Frost Pass dispatch book. Cray laid it on the desk. The page for the Storm night showed or priority, late northbound, weather delay. No wagon order. Harlan looked at Viola. Your proof, Miss Reed. Viola sat at the key, her fingers hurt. Her name was ash in half the mouths around her. Her fare was gone. If the wire failed now, Cray would not need to ruin her. The silence would do it for him. Ethan did not touch her. He only set his scratched relay pad beside her hand. I heard you once, he said. I can hear you again. Viola began to send. The room held its breath. Even the passengers who had whispered against her leaned toward the sounder. Not words first, rhythm. The double break after stop, the hard run of northbound, the pause before wagon on grade. Across the room, the sounder answered from Medicine Bow, matching her beat. Then came the words, plain enough for every person crowding the depot to hear as Harlan read them aloud. Medicine Bow confirms storm order, stop northbound, wagon on grade, confirmed before ore release, Frost duplicate missing. A mother near the stove covered her mouth when the word wagon clicked through. No one looked at Cray first. They looked at Viola's bandaged hand on the key. Viola turned to Harlan. I sent the stop order, and Mason Cray hid the duplicate from the line book to keep his ore train moving. One sentence, no lace, no trembling. Noel made a sound like a man stepping off a ledge. He removed his station cap before he spoke. He took the yellow copy, he said. I saw it in his coat. I let her stand alone because I wanted my desk more than I wanted the truth. Cray lunged for the book. Ethan caught his arm. Pike took the train staff from Cray's hand. The little dispatch key had hung from Cray's chain like a second badge. When Harlan took it and laid it on the desk, the silver chain looked suddenly useless. "Mason Cray," the inspector said, "you are relieved of dispatch authority pending formal charge. The Or priority is suspended. This book is sealed." Cray looked at the crowd, waiting for the old obedience. It did not come. The passengers stared at him. The ranchers stared at him. Noel stepped away from the dispatch door and stood beside Viola's chair. "Miss Reed," Harlan said, "can you keep Frost Pass open until Cheyenne sends relief?" Viola looked at the wire, then at Ethan. His face held hope so carefully it almost broke her. "Yes," she said, "but not as Charity, as operator." Harlan opened a clean page. "Name: Viola Reed. Post." Ethan answered before he could stop himself. "Frost Pass wire keeper." A small laugh moved through the room, tired and grateful. Harlan wrote it down. The schoolboy's mother came forward then. Her bonnet strings were loose, and her eyes were red from more than cold. "My Ben said you let him hear the wire," she said. Viola stood carefully. "He asked a good question." "I asked a poor one." The woman turned so the room could hear her. "I let Mr. Cray's words sit easier in my mouth than yours because he sounded official. My boy is breathing because somebody did not wait for official." She held out a knitted wrist warmer, gray wool with a blue stripe. "For your hand, it is not payment." Viola took it with her throat tight. "Then what is it?" "A start." Pike lifted his lantern again. "Put my name under hers in that book if you need men to clear wire poles." Another rancher said, "And mine." The passengers began speaking at once, not loudly, but with the relieved shame of people who had almost followed the wrong man into another danger. Noel copied names as Harlan dictated. The station room changed while Cray still stood in it, not into kindness, not all at once, into usefulness. That mattered more. By evening the snow eased. Cray was put on the south train under the inspector's eye, without his key, without his book, without a single man asking his permission. Noel signed a public correction and copied it twice, one for Cheyenne and one for the depot wall. The Or extra waited until the school road was clear. Viola worked until the last family message went through. When she finally returned to the line shack, the lamp was burning on Ethan's relay desk. Her repaired brass key sat polished on a square of blue cloth. Above it, Ethan had nailed a small wooden strip into the wall. "Frost Pass wire keeper, Viola Reed." The letters were not fancy. Ethan had carved them with a pocket knife. The V leaned a little. The R was stubborn. Aunt June pretended to fuss with coffee so badly that Viola loved her for it. Ethan stood by the desk, hat in his hands. "The morning train may run in 2 days," he said. "Your fare is gone because you spent it saving my pass. I will replace it if Denver is still your road." Viola touched the carved letters. "And if it is not?" He swallowed. "Then I would like to court you properly, not because you need shelter, not because I spoke for you, because when the whole pass heard snow and fear, you heard the truth and kept sending." The wire clicked once in the quiet, some far station testing the line. Viola smiled. Courtship should wait until after supper. Ethan's hope slipped loose then, warm and unguarded. "Yes, ma'am. And I keep the key." "It is already yours." On the depot wall, Noel's public correction dried beside Viola Reed's name. In the relay shack, she sat at the desk, placed her bandaged hand on the polished brass key, and sent one clean line through the pass. "Frost Pass open, wire steady." This time, no man folded her truth into his coat. This time the whole pass heard her.